So we're going to have some lovely music today. I'd like to introduce first Michelle Aaron. She will be doing Bist du bei mir by Johann Sebastian Bach, God is My Shepherd by Antonin Dvorak, and Frühlingslaube by Franz Schubert. So go ahead.
Thank you. So this is in German. So for those who aren't yet fluent in German, the Gestalt, if you are with me when I pass, if you are the one to lovingly shut my eyes, I will go to my rest happy or content. Bist du bei mir, geh ich mit Freuden zum Sterben und zu meiner Ruhe, zum Sterben und zu meiner Ruhe. Bist du bei mir, geh ich mit Freuden zum Sterben und zu meiner Ruhe, zum Sterben und zu meiner Ruhe. Bist du bei mir, geh ich mit Freuden zum Sterben und zu meiner Ruhe, zum Sterben und zu meiner Ruhe. Ach, wie vergnügt, wer so mein Ende, es drückt an deine liebe Hände, mir die getreuen Augen zu. Ach, wie vergnügt, wer so mein Ende, es drückt an deine schöne Hände, mir die getreuen Augen zu. Bist du bei mir, geh ich mit Freuden zum Sterben und zu meiner Ruhe, zum Sterben und zu meiner Ruhe. God is my shepherd, I want for nothing. My rest is in the pleasant meadows. He leadeth me where quiet waters flow. My fainting soul doth he restore, and leadeth me in the ways of peace to glorify his name. And though in death's dark valley my steps must walk, Frühlingsglaube in German, it's in German, is the hope in spring. You can ask me later if you'd like a full translation, but if you consider the hope that spring and the coming of flowers and the turn of the season brings, that's the idea. Who will be singing Ich liebe dich by Beethoven.
Just a few words about the piece. It was written when Beethoven was only 25 years old in 1795. Ich liebe dich just means I love you. If you want a full translation, you can ask me later. But it's basically just someone expressing their love for another person and the delight that that love gives them.
Ich liebe dich so, wie du mich
sie für dich und ich geteilt gleich so ertragen. Du tröstetest im Kummer mich, ich weint in deine Klagen, in deine Klagen. Drum Gottes Segen über dir, du meines Lebens Freude. Gott schütze dich, erhalt dich mir, schütz und erhalt uns beide. Gott schütze dich, erhalt dich mir, schütz und erhalt uns beide. Erhalt uns beide. Erhalt uns beide. Thank you. Now I just want to introduce Reverend Dr. Lisa Bryce. She'll be singing for us, and she'll talk about what she'll be singing about.
Good evening. I'd like to open with a beautiful spiritual, There is a Balm in Gilead, which we all know and has a special place in our heart once we sing it, once we hear it, and to help us along our faith journey and to promote peace. What the trees are swaying, leaves growing, the life of a butternut tree coming from a seed and bearing its own fruit, which exactly is nuts. And I just wanted to sing this for you because it's such a beautiful melody, beautiful piano arrangement as well. And it just is very soothing to the mind and to the soul.
And the previous generation of LaRouche youth movement. Ready? Yes, oh my
probably should stand for the national anthem.
Do you want them to sing this? We're doing one verse. Thank you. Okay, ready? Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets with glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? We're going to do another patriotic song, the Battle Cry of Freedom. And Chris will do the calls.
Yes, we'll rally round the flag, boys, we'll rally once again.
Shouting the battle cry of freedom.
We will rally from the hillside, we'll gather from the plain.
Shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah. Down with the traitors, up with the star, while we rally round the flag, boys, rally once again. Shouting the battle cry of freedom.
We are springing to the call of our brothers gone before.
Shouting the battle cry of freedom.
And we'll fill the vacant ranks with 1,000,000 free men more.
Shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah. Down with the traitors, up with the star, while we rally round the flag, boys, rally once again. Shouting the battle cry of freedom.
We will welcome to our numbers the loyal, true, and brave.
Shouting the battle cry of freedom.
And although they may be poor, not a man shall be a slave.
Shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah. Down with the traitors, up with the star, while we rally round the flag, boys, rally once again. Shouting the battle cry of freedom.
So we're springing to the call from the east and from the west.
Shouting the battle cry of freedom. And we'll hurl the rebel crew from the land we love the best. Shouting the battle cry of freedom. The Union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah. Down with the traitors, up with the star, while we rally round the flag, boys, rally once again. Shouting the battle cry of freedom.
So first of all, thank you all for getting here. As everyone knows, since you're here, we were supposed to be somewhere else, but we got harassed, and the church was not prepared to stand up to the harassment, we'll put it that way. And I'm not going to blame them, because people didn't sign up for this fight necessarily, but those of us here have signed up for the fight, and the fight is to save civilization. My Senate race is not just about, in fact, it's not probably at all about votes. or me getting in the Senate, even though I should be in the Senate because I am certainly the most qualified candidate for Senate and more qualified than almost anyone in the Senate that I can think of. That's not bragging, it's a very low bar. So I'm glad you're here. The fact that we were harassed indicates the power of what we are doing. And I wanted to start, therefore, with a quote from an author I don't particularly care for, but he said something right, so credit where credit is due. Voltaire, who according to RT, and actually it was Dan Kovalik, a friend of the peace movement, quote, "Whoever can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities." And it goes on, "Formerly, there were those who said, you believe things that are incomprehensible, inconsistent, impossible, because we have commanded you to believe them. Go then and do what is unjust, because we command it." Now, there is hardly anything more absurd than telling a boy that he is a girl, or a girl that she is a boy or a girl that you don't know what they are, and there are 37 options and they can be surgically imposed on you. And this issue of the transgenderism or sex change is actually far worse than anyone here probably can imagine unless you have begun delving into it, as my guest speaker has done and as I have begun to do recently. The people who undergo these surgical procedures end up damaged for life. 71% of them are in pain for the rest of their life. It leads to diabetes, urinary tract infections, hypertension, and if you're asking a 14-year-old girl if she's concerned that she will never be able to breastfeed or never able to have children, as one of the women who is detransitioning said, "What did I know when I was 14? I wasn't thinking about having children. I didn't think that was an issue." But in this day and age, you have the social media, you have people with billions of dollars running publicity campaigns to recruit and brainwash the children. And if a parent stands against it, it is the parent who is going to make the child commit suicide. And that's what we are told. And as physically and mentally disturbing as it is for the children, it is also the parents who are being traumatized first by their child coming home and saying something that is insane, but then telling the parent, "You obviously don't love me, you're not affirming me, you're not supporting me," to the extreme cases where the Child Protective Services comes in and removes the child from that household to make sure that they continue with their sex change, and the parent whose child has been taken away is forced to pay all the medical bills for this. And this is happening in the United States. And it was because Elena has had the courage to speak out about this, and Moms for Liberty has had the courage to fight it. That was what was cited at the church. Now, I thought, having been an old LaRouche organizer, when we got the call, I thought the priest was going to say, "I looked you up, and you are with Lyndon LaRouche, and we are..." No, but I told Elena, I have been through this for 35 years. There are so many meetings that we have tried to hold, and at the last one, "Oh, we're sorry, something came up, we can't have you here. Oh, we're so sorry, you're disinvited. Oh, we're so sorry." That means you are on track and you are doing something that needs to be done. Now, since we have this horrific situation in Southwest Asia, where the news media is doing its best to cover every atrocity committed on every side to get everyone to the maximum emotionally crazed and hating each other, I wanted to say a little bit about a group that some of you may be familiar with, the Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith. The LaRouche movement published a book in, 1992. That's a long time ago, 31 years ago. The Ugly Truth About the ADL. The ADL was created to cover for organized crime. Meyer Lansky, Edgar Bronfman, bootleggers, drug pushers, etc. But also there's a chapter in this book from 30 years ago, the ADL peddles the new age. Because who is it that's attacking Moms for Liberty and saying that if you don't want your child to be mutilated and sick for the rest of your life, that you are a racist and you are a homophobe and you are whatever? The Southern Poverty Law Center, another deceitfully fraudulent organization, the ADL. So the ADL, this book says, in the summer of 1989, the entire world was reeling in shock and horror over the discovery of a satanic burial ground on a ranch in Matamoros, Mexico. Dozens of mutilated, cannibalized corpses were discovered. The grisly details of the kidnapping and human sacrifice of one of the cult's victims, Texas college student Mark Kilroy, prompted Texas state legislators to draft a law stiffening the penalties for satanic ritualistic crimes. Makes sense to me. And making it a criminal offense to conduct certain occult rituals. The governor of Texas convened a special session of the legislature to get the bill passed. The ADL, while peddling bills all over the country that would make it a crime to even think an anti-Semitic thought, launched an all-out effort to defeat the Texas crackdown on Satanism, branding the bill anti-Semitic. Now, I think many Jewish people would be quite offended that the Anti-Defamation League is equating satanic ritual murders with Judaism, but that is what the ADL did. And they said that, and they lied, and they claimed that the bill made it illegal for rabbis to perform circumcisions, which was not the case. But that was how they mobilized to defeat the bill against satanic rituals. They failed, but I'm just saying that the evil that is being done has an enforcers, and they are a fraud. Now, the ADL was also known to perpetrate so-called hate crimes in order to raise a lot of money and foment wars. So take the kind of argument that you get right now and see how this works. Bibi Netanyahu, who is an extremely unpopular leader in Israel for good reason, facing charges, was about to go to jail, was trying to dismantle the justice system so he could avoid jail, and who basically brought the Hamas into power because he wanted them funded as opposed to the PLO. Suddenly, there's a vicious, brutal, horrific surprise attack. And I'm not going to get into how peculiar I find the idea that such a massive attack would be a surprise, just like 9/11 was supposedly a surprise, if you remember. A giant attack where somehow none of our jets were scrambled, the security around the Pentagon doesn't exist. There are a lot of questions about who wanted that, cui bono. So you have this horrific attack, and no one sane would say that Israel should sit there and let terrorists come in and do horrible things. They have a right to respond. do they have a right to cut off food, water, and electricity to 2.3 million people and then drop phosphorus on them, burning their skin off? No, they do not. That is a war crime. Now, if I say that it is a war crime to burn the skin off of people in Gaza, the media says I am supporting Hamas. No, I'm not supporting Hamas. I don't support what Hamas did, and I don't support what's being done in retaliation. Who benefits? As I said on a program I was on the other night, will it make Israel more secure if every one of the Arab and Muslim nations surrounding Israel believes that they are trying to exterminate 2.2 people in Gaza? Is that going to make Israel safe? Is that going to make everyone love Israel and say, let's rally to their cause? No, it is not. It's also having another fringe benefit in the United States, where they are terrified about the independent candidacy of Robert F. Kennedy, who apparently has made some statements in support of Israel. He's very pro-Israel. And many people in the peace movement don't appreciate that. So all of a sudden, Dennis Kucinich has now resigned as his campaign manager. So what you see is using this divide and conquer. If you believe this, well, you must believe blah, 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 blah. If you don't like satanic rituals, well, you obviously are against circumcision, right? I mean, this is and then everyone gets super emotional about it, and you all want to, do something terrible to your next door neighbor. Now, LaRouche wrote a paper about this after 9/11. It was a very short press release. It was called Shoot the Neighbor's Cat. What does it start? He says, suppose, and he blamed CNN. This was only 5 days after 9/11. He said, suppose you come home and you discover your house has been robbed, and the cat runs across the yard of the next door neighbor, and the man blows the cat away. And then the wife says, but honey, that's just the neighbor's cat. He says, I don't care. Get out of my way or I'll shoot you too. Now, LaRouche warned after 9/11 that if the United States didn't look within to find out who did this and who allowed it, and we know today because we have whistleblowers from the NSA, like Bill Binney and others, not only could it have been prevented, but we know people at the NSA went to Michael Hayden and said there is going to be a big terrorist attack on the US, and they were told, be quiet. And LaRouche said, if you don't look within and root out that evil, then it is lurking there, ready to do another attack. And you can go all over the world, and you can blow up every darker skinned nation on the planet that doesn't have the power to penetrate the security of the United States. You think some guy sitting in a cave in Afghanistan with kidney failure pulled off 9/11? Really? And then in 2003, we were told Iraq, which never had Al-Qaeda, had weapons of mass destruction. And we bombed them and we killed 1 million people. 1 million people. And 5,000 American soldiers. Yikes. Hold on here. What?
I take responsibility for this.
Okay. We're going to slightly adjust this. Okay. They can stay there.
Probably not. It's a liability.
What? Should I go on?
Yeah.
We're done. Okay, that was the adjustment. Okay. So 5,000 American soldiers, 5,000 private contractors died in Iraq. we have in the United States, last I checked, over 2.7 million Americans who fought in Iraq or Afghanistan or were stationed in other places after the 9/11 attacks. And think about what has happened to them. Think about what happened in Afghanistan and it was good that Trump negotiated that we would leave. We should not have been there, but the way that we left was an abomination. Interestingly, since we've left, they are beginning to wipe out the opium production. It increased 40-fold. The drug production in Afghanistan increased 40-fold while we were occupying that country. So this is what we are fighting in the United States, and therefore what is most important is that we commit ourselves to look for the truth and to also know certain fundamental things, that you have to believe that human beings are fundamentally good, that human beings don't just randomly want to run around killing each other. And you know that because you can drive down highways that cars move in opposite directions, and you don't have a million head-on collisions, right? People actually don't want to kill each other. So when you see people acting crazy, you have to ask, how did this come to occur? What are the conditions for it? Are they on drugs? Who is pushing the drugs? Have they been through trauma? What you want to know the cause. And we're not going to solve the situation in Southwest Asia by battling over, are you for Israel or are you for Palestine? That is not the answer, and that is not the issue, and that is not the cause. It's outside players. There are certain issues of the injustice of what has happened to the Palestinian people over many generations, but that is not a reason for people to do what the Hamas did. So it's complicated. The other aspect of this I just want to say is, does anyone remember that there was a war between Russia and Ukraine going on? Now, that war, over 400,000 Ukrainians have died. And Joe Biden, the person occupying the White House right now, has said that Ukraine can win this war. Now, you can look at a map. Ukraine isn't that large. Russia is very large. Russia has nuclear weapons. It doesn't matter how much. It would be like if the United States decided to do an operation in Mexico to wipe out the drug cartels, and I don't know, somebody told Mexico from Mali, if Mali were a superpower, they said, hey, you Mexicans, you just keep fighting America. We're going to send you all these weapons. You can win. You can win. They're not going to win. You're just going to grind up their people into hamburger meat. Well, Biden has a problem because he said Ukraine was going to win. He's up for re-election. He and his son also conducted a great deal of criminal activity in Ukraine. Maybe they're trying to level the place so no one gets the evidence. But whatever goes on, they certainly don't want people paying attention to Ukraine losing. Ukraine just had a counteroffensive 4 months. What happened? They lost, of course. Russia is winning the war. Russia is beating NATO. So you're not allowed to discuss that. So we start another war, and we do it in a place where everyone can be made to be super emotional and hysterical about it. And that's why this campaign, we have to be above this, and we have to fight for what the United States actually is supposed to be doing in the world, which is not the British Empire. We had a revolution. I know no one here was alive in 1776, but we had a revolution against the British. And if you read the Declaration of Independence, you will see that every single offense that we complained about that the British were doing to us, we are now doing to everyone else in the world. So somehow we flipped. We became the empire against which we fought. Now, there is no one who can solve that except us. Someone cannot come, even though a lot of people around the world would like the United States to be better, and they are wondering, where is the good America? They cannot come to our country and say, you must do X. As much as I think Biden is senile and criminal, if someone came here to overthrow our government, I would fight. No one from outside has any business overthrowing our government, just as we have no business overthrowing other people's governments. So who is going to get the United States to change? Oh, I know, Chuck Schumer. He's been there, right? He's been there for 42 years, going on 48. Maybe he'll do it. Maybe Kevin McCarthy or even Jim Jordan. He'll be a better speaker. Maybe he'll do it. Do you think Jim Jordan is going to straighten out the United States single-handedly? No. The people who have to straighten out the United States are us, are the American people. Gillibrand, yeah, she's really going to do it. She's more laid back. So the last thing, I just want to show you one thing, because we'll be hearing from Lisa and Elena, and I think Elena will go next, and then Lisa Bryce, Reverend Dr. Bryce, about her work in music education. Elena next on what's being done to the children and how to teach the children. But I just want to give one little example of something that we could be doing in this country, and it has to do with rail. And it has to do with magnetically levitated rail, which was, after all, invented at Brookhaven Labs, not so very far from here, by a guy named James Powell and another guy named Gordon Danby. And one of our guests here has had the privilege of knowing and working on maglev right there, Robert Forstrom. So I hope he doesn't find my presentation to have big mistakes, but I'm using their article, so I'm just going to, so if we can, yeah. I just want to show you a little bit, and then we'll, this is what LaRouche and his wife proposed many years ago, 1996, the Eurasian Land Bridge. These are railroads. They're not built yet. They could be. You see that one, the Bering Strait? That idea is as old as the Civil War. Abraham Lincoln and others said it's only 40 miles or so. Why don't we work with Russia? Why don't we trade? Russia, in case you don't know, actually came and sent the Navy to the United States in support of Lincoln and the Union during the Civil War. So it was natural to want to work with them. And you can imagine you could take a train from New York and go all the way to Paris by train. Next. Now, this is a map, but it's missing one under the bottom there. This is the BRICS countries: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. So here, that should be green. But you see, that's a rather large chunk of the world. That's a new group of nations who have come together. They're talking about creating a new currency. Why did they come together? Well, they were working together starting in 2013, but even more so since the dollar has become a weapon. And we throw people off the SWIFT system and we put sanctions on them. So it's not reliable. If you care about your population, it's not reliable to use the dollar for currency. Next. Now, several new nations have been invited to join the BRICS. You're not seeing Argentina in this map, but you are seeing Ethiopia, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Iran. Look where they are. Look where this horrific, ugly war has broken out. Isn't that interesting? Right in the center of where you have this new possibility coming together. And I would also urge you to think, as you're looking at this map, where are the hot spots in the world? You have Africa, you have Southwest Asia, you have Asia, you have Russia, you have Turkey, you have the Ottomans. This whole region is a crossroads of ancient civilizations. If you are the British Empire, if you hate mankind and you want people to be slaves, you don't want them talking and getting along, because God forbid we might learn how to make paper from the Chinese, or gunpowder, or someone might learn how to make laser beams from the United States, or some wise guy in Egypt actually measured the circumference of the earth in 232 BC. You don't want these people talking, you want them fighting. Next. So here now you see the yellow nations, the red, sorry. The red nations are the original BRICS nations: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. The gray nations are the new BRICS members. The yellow nations are the nations that have applied for membership in the BRICS. And what you see is, just with the red and the gray nations, these countries control 29% of the world's GDP, 46% of the world's population, 43% of the world's oil production, and 25% of the exports. That's quite a bit. Now, if the United States were acting like the United States, we would be in the middle of this, because the kind of economics that they're using are very much like the principles of the American system of physical economy, that what you are trying to invest in, what do you do when you build infrastructure? You're giving the people more power over their environment. That's what Alexander Hamilton set up. That's why the United States built the first ever transcontinental railroad, and the canals that we built, and because we were giving our people more power to change nature. Next. This is, now I guess these are slightly in the wrong order. So go to the trains. Yeah, this is just a model of there's different models of maglev trains. This is the model that these two were proposing, and those black lines are superconducting magnets. Now, in this case, the magnets, has anyone here played with magnets, and you know you can put them together the wrong way and the right way, right? So if you push them the wrong way, you get this resistance. It's like a field. So this train floats on this magnetic field, and in this case, about 4 inches off the track. So guess what? There's very little friction. And it means that the train can go easily. And they say in the article, once you get over 300 miles per hour, it gets a little noisy, but there seems to be a sweet spot at if you go into a vacuum tunnel, you can go really, really fast. You can go 1,000 miles an hour or more. But on this, 300 miles an hour, that's not bad. That's like an airplane in some cases, a slow airplane. You could go from New York to Washington, D.C. in an hour on a very comfortable, smooth train. This was invented here, and they're very quiet. Now we'll go to number one. Not that. The slide that starts with number one. Yeah. Why is maglev, first, important? So this is from the first. It is cheaper, faster, not congested, has a much longer service life. A maglev guideway can transport tens of thousands of passengers per day, along with thousands of piggyback trucks or automobiles. Maglev operating costs, now this was in 2003, so 20 years ago, 3 cents per passenger mile, 7 cents per ton mile, compared to 15 cents, so it costs 5 times more for airplanes, and it costs, I guess, between about 5.5, 4.5 times more for trucks. The tracks will last 50 years or more because they're not getting touched. There's not wear and tear. Next. Yeah. Second, maglev is energy efficient. Unlike autos, trucks, and airplanes, it doesn't burn oil but uses electricity, which can be produced by coal-fired, nuclear, hydro, fusion, wind or solar plants. I'm not for those, but it's okay. The most efficient now being nuclear, 300 miles per hour. Now here's the interesting thing. How much energy does it take to move your train? 0.4 megajoules per passenger mile compared to 4 megajoules per passenger mile for an automobile. that carries a little under 2 people, right? So in other words, it consumes 1/10 of the energy per person as a car. And it says at 150 miles per hour, it consumes only 0.1 of a megajoule per passenger mile, which is only 2% of the energy consumption. Okay, so 2% times 50, so it's only 1/50th of the energy of a 60 mile per hour automobile. And then he says in low pressure tunnels or tubes, energy consumption per passenger mile will shrink to the equivalent of 10,000 miles a gallon. Not bad. Okay, next. Third, no pollution. They don't emit anything. And they're quiet. They're much quieter than autos, trucks, and planes. Next. And fourth, it has major safety advantages. The distance between the vehicles on the guideway and the speed of the vehicles are automatically controlled and maintained by the frequency of the electric power. There is no possibility of collisions between vehicles on the guideway. Moreover, since the guideways are elevated, there is no possibility of collisions with autos or trucks. So now go back to that map. So what they were proposing is a maglev network, and I think we need much more, but this is a good start. 16,000 miles in the United States, which would serve 90% of the American population. They said with this grid here, 70% of the American people would be within 15 miles of a train station. Okay, and you can see New York, where it's invented, has a couple important corridors. One, the north-south one, from Manhattan up to Canada to Montreal, and the other is from Albany through to Buffalo. And we need more because we need to do the industrial corridor from Long Island through Pennsylvania, but that's a whole, we're working on that next. So now just very quickly, how are we doing here? Okay. That's one in China. What happened, by the way, with the maglev technology is we were never interested in building it. So the Japanese came to Brookhaven and said, hey, you guys aren't building this. Can you sell us the patent? And we did. And the Japanese built the maglev, and the Germans built one, and the Chinese got theirs from Germany. And now I want to show you just a snip of a trip. So start at 2 minutes in. This is the one in Japan. Can we get a little sound on here?
Which door should we go in right now? This out number 1. Wow, so look at this rooftop. This is awesome. And look, this is the bridge right here where the maglev train passes by. So I think the train is gonna come right now. I probably count it down, but I think it should be coming. It's coming. It's coming. Whoa, that was so fast! So the train's normal operating speed is about 500 kilometers per hour, 311 miles per hour, which means it cuts down the current Tokyo to Osaka 2.5-hour Shinkansen ride down to only 67 minutes for people in the States, Washington D.C. to New York in just 1 hour. Okay, so it looks like this is the boarding area right here. So we've got some seats
forward
right
about
here.
8 minutes?
There's a display just right there as well.
Yeah.
Right now, just about right here, I think the wheels are going up. It's a lot smoother. Wish I just, had a drink and I could chill here. It's now going 320 kilometers an hour, but it doesn't feel any different than it was earlier. So it's pretty smooth.
Okay, you can
so
stop.
I think we're going to go head back. I reserve the fastest train in the world.
So that's now. I just want to show you the last picture. This is really exciting. What they propose is using one of these low-pressure tunnels with the maglev technology to actually launch rockets to space, because you can get so much speed in that low, and that once you get high up in the atmosphere, it's also less friction, like a vacuum tunnel, and you can use them to launch your space program, rockets. It's a whole other technology. Now, we should be working on this. And what is happening with our children? They are not being taught anything they need to be able to do this. And that's where you see the hideousness of the crime. It is not merely what they are doing, mutilating, brainwashing, traumatizing, but you're also robbing them of their right to become geniuses and to contribute to the future. So that's what I had. Thank you very much. And I think we'll just go ahead to Elena Chin. So I'm going to... Thanks. So if you want, you want to introduce her? Go ahead. He's going to
Just want to introduce Elena Diaz with Moms for Liberty.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Elena Chin. I am a retired guidance counselor. I worked for the Department of Ed for 23 and a half years. I started working when I was about 36, so I might have gotten into it with a different attitude, a different mindset. I wasn't very young. I was pretty adult when I first got my job, and I saw things a lot differently than most. And I saw there were a lot of problems. I stayed for 23 and a half years, but things changed very drastically after the pandemic. First of all, I was very opposed to keeping kids out of school for 2 years. It was horrible. When the children came back, you could see the harm it had done to them. Their little faces, they didn't know how to act. They had the masks on. They looked at us like little empty souls. It literally brought me to tears. And I said, oh my God, what have we done? And then things just got worse and worse. And it became very difficult to go and be part of this Department of Education when I no longer believed in anything I was doing. It was getting ridiculous. Okay, the critical race theory, the teaching of all the genders. Now keep in mind, I was in elementary school. So my last year was when we came back after the pandemic. I just couldn't do it anymore. I said, I had 2 years to go, and I said, you know what, I am not helping children. I can't do this anymore. It was really conflicting with everything I believed in, and everything had changed radically. So I retired 2 years early, and right about the same time when I retired, I found out about Moms for Liberty. Okay, we are moms, we are dads, we are aunts, we are uncles, we are friends, we are anybody concerned with the well-being of children. I have a number of members here from our Queens chapter. Could you guys stand up? I'm so proud to be here with them. Jim in the background. They are wonderful, supportive, great people. I am so lucky to have them. We are people who have a desire to stand up for children. Not many people have the courage to stand up for children, definitely not in the Department of Ed, because you're really not allowed. I did try to voice my opinion and say how wrong I thought certain things were, and it didn't go well. It fell on deaf ears, and it just made my departure quicker. Let's put it that way. So I realized that I could not help children. I could no longer help children working for the Department of Ed, and found out about Moms for Liberty and what they represent. They're against the harmful policies. It all started with the masking of children. It started with closing the schools down, and it's spiraled into so much more because now people are aware of what's going on, and people are vocal about it. What do we oppose? We've been called a hate group by Southern Poverty Law Center. Thank you very much. They've just made us grow by about 50 chapters or more. So we are now up to 300 chapters, over 120,000 members across the country, across the nation, in 45 states. I had the pleasure of meeting 600 Moms for Liberty people from across the country back in the end of June at the summit. And there was nothing hateful going on in that hotel. We were in the Marriott Hotel in Philly. It was an amazing experience, amazing bunch of people going through all sorts of things, just trying to fight for children. All of the hatred, to be honest with you, was outside of the hotel. I'm not going to get into that, but there was a lot of it. What do we really promote? We want to teach, we want limited government. We want the power back into the parents. We are not parenting with the government. They are not in charge of our children. They do not know what's best for our children. And they shouldn't be intimidating parents and making them believe that their children will commit suicide if they don't buy into this insanity. I'll get into that. We know that to save our nation, we have to start promoting principles of liberty. To advance our society, as Diane pointed out, we need to start teaching again. School has become like a social institution, like a giant social service. And everything else is secondary. Learning is like somewhere at the bottom. That's the way I see it. We are a nonpartisan group. Matters regarding children should not be partisan. This is not about politics. This is about our children. But people are so political now that they're really like forgetting about their children. And the politics are somewhere on top of their children. That's really got to stop. So what do? We try to engage with elected officials, hold them accountable for what's going on, for the policies they're putting in place. We are trying to take a little control over the school boards by getting some normal-minded people into office, by encouraging people, helping anybody who wants to run that is like-minded. And we're about spreading awareness. I think this has been a key point. We are the first chapter in New York City. Okay, New York State has chapters upstate. There's a Nassau County chapter. There's a Suffolk County chapter. We are the first in New York City, and it is desperately needed. Our goal is to get chapters in all 5 boroughs. But what I'm finding out is at every venue that I speak, people really have no clue what's going on. They don't. Even after the pandemic, gave them a little hint of what's going on, but it's so much deeper. So the first step in solving a problem is knowing that the problem exists. So Dr. Grossman is a doctor who's speaking out because our children don't have allies with their doctors anymore, their teachers, or anyone. But Dr. Grossman, she's not afraid to speak about what's going on with children. So I'm just going to play a little clip of what Dr. Grossman has to say because it's very significant. No.
Not too long ago, the parents that I saw in my office were concerned about the hookup culture and friends with benefits. They worried that their teen daughters might get pregnant or infected with herpes. Those were the good old days. Now the parents that I see are asking me for Xanax for their panic attacks and insomnia. Their daughters want to grow beards and have their breasts removed. I am reporting to you from the front lines of the war on gender ideology. I am not a journalist, I am not an academic, and I'm not part of a think tank. I am a medical doctor who's in the trenches, helping families with children who believe their bodies are terrible mistakes. Some of my patients wear tight elastic binders to flatten their developing breasts. They go through the day in pain, feeling lightheaded and short of breath. Many of my male patients shave their chests, arms, and legs to erase signs of masculinity. Forgive me for being graphic. One 15-year-old patient tapes his penis between his legs and pushes his testicles up into his inguinal canals. He does this to create a flat, feminine crotch. My patients have gender dysphoria. They are dissociated from their bodies. They have trauma, depression, anxiety, autism, eating disorders, and other mental health problems. Their suffering is intense, and they are convinced that relief will come only from testosterone shots, estrogen patches, and a surgeon's scalpel. Their parents' worry and anguish cannot be described. I've been asked to speak today about how gender ideology is a medical experiment on our children. To be more precise, the actual experiment is gender-affirming care that the American Psychiatric Association and our Health and Human Services tells me I must provide. It's an experiment because instead of psychotherapy that slowly and gently explores a child's difficulties and provides emotional healing, it calls for interference with normal development, followed by permanent and drastic alteration of her healthy body. There is no high-quality evidence that gender-affirming care leads to long-term positive outcomes or decreased suicides, while there is conclusive evidence of serious harm and lifelong suffering. Gender-affirming care calls for unquestioning acceptance of a child's chosen identity, even though that identity contradicts reality. It means placing the child in the driver's seat, no matter how young or troubled he may be, allowing him to pick his name, his pronouns, his clothing, and his bathroom. This is all called social transition. Likewise, decisions to block puberty, to take cross-sex hormones, and undergo surgery are based on the child's or teenager's wishes. That is not practicing medicine. That is rubber stamping a child's self-diagnosis. Gender-affirming care is centered on two assumptions. First, that regarding gender, children and adolescents know best who they are and what they need. And second, that it is possible to be born in the wrong body. These beliefs have not been proven. There is no evidence that they are legitimate. Nevertheless, for the past 10 years, affirming care has been widely accepted in the US as the first-line treatment for gender dysphoria. This would not be accepted in...
Okay, so what concerns me the most and why I couldn't really be a part of it was that all of this line of thinking is going down to kindergarten and elementary schools. There's a push in New York City, okay, for comprehensive sexuality education. Okay, this is just going to ensure and mandate this stuff in our public schools. Right now, the only mandatory sex ed lessons are on AIDS, and that's in the upper grades. Okay, apparently we're behind the 8 ball on sexuality education, and there's a push, and bills keep getting introduced, and right now there's a bill in the Senate, regarding comprehensive sexuality education, and I really think we need to stop it. There's pornography in our schools, literally pornographical. I have copies. I'm not going to give it out unless you ask me for it because it might be offensive to some people, to some adults. We have laws that protect adults from obscenity in the United States. However, schools and libraries are getting away with it under the umbrella of sex education. So you ask how this is happening, and where did it all come from? That's even more insane. I did a lot of investigative research on where did this stuff come from? How do we come to believe that this stuff is the right thing for children? And what I found was that it's based on fraudulent data, discarded theories of two very, very emotionally wounded pedophiles who basically legitimized child abuse. One of them was Alfred Kinsey, a sexologist who was known as the pioneer of sex research. His ideas basically ushered in the sexual revolution, started the abortion issues, AIDS, and led to a whole bunch of things that have been really harmful to society. And now we want to bring all of this down to the younger grades. He believed that children were sexual from birth on, that they're born sexual. He didn't have any problems with doing any kind of unethical experiments with children. I'm not going to get into everything. The man was a madman, okay? He circumcised himself at the age of 60 with a pocket knife to explore pain and sexual pleasure. So this is the kind of people we're worshiping and saying, oh, they're the experts on this sexuality education. Just to give you an idea of what they were like. And this is what we want to bring to our children. It's also based on John Money's theory that sex is a social construct, that it's not determined by biology, and that gender is fluid. Okay, he's famous for a twin study. He endorsed a twin study that ended drastically with the suicide and the drug overdose of the two victims, I'll call them, that he based his experiments on. Okay, he endorsed incest, pedophilia. In fact, he referred to it as a love affair between an age discrepant couple. So this is just to give you an idea where these theories are coming from and the kind of people they're coming from. But yet, this is what we're basing sexuality education on. The Kinsey Institute still exists today. Sex ed is an industry. Just like social emotional learning, which what I'll talk about also, is an industry. It's global. It's making some people a lot of money, just like it made John Money a lot of money and Alfred Kinsey. They got speaking engagements, books. In fact, there's a statue of Alfred Kinsey. I forget which university that he went to. So there's money being made on this stuff. Sex sells. The United States, one of the biggest consumers of child porn. So I ask myself, where are we going with this? What good could possibly come to children to teach them these things at such a young age? They're not happier. It's confusing them. I saw it firsthand with the children that I saw in my office, the confusion that it caused them, the conflict that it put them in, that some of my young children thought they were gay, and then they went home to their families who disapproved of that, and now they were in conflict with their families and torn emotionally. The children don't even want to see some of these things that they're seeing. Normally when a child was shown something inappropriate, they would come to me and right away and tell me, oh, so-and-so brought something in, Miss Chin, he showed me this. And the kids knew better. What are we doing here? Like, what are we doing? Please feel free to pick up on the way out some of the stuff that I've taken out of the most banned books that they're calling us book banners for. I mean, I show it to some adults and they're taken back. It's crazy. Even my 20-year-old daughter, sometimes I think she's like, Ma, all right, enough. But she picked up the books the other day because I took a bunch of them out from the library, and she said, oh my God, she called me up on the phone. She said, these are the books? I said, yes, those are the books. Now you know why I do what I do. Okay, it's not fun, sorry, Diane, to get your event canceled. It's scary. It gives me knots in my stomach. But you know what makes me more sick? To think that our children are going under the knife, that they are being castrated, they're being mutilated. Okay, they don't have doctors on their side anymore. They don't have teachers on their side. And some of them don't even have parents on their side. Now for me, those were the kids that I took under my wing the most. The kids who didn't have their parents on their side at school. So I just can't imagine how parents don't see the fault of what's going on. But most of the parents I speak to, they're shocked. They just really didn't know. So just to give you an idea what's going on, before 2012, gender dysphoria was very rare. In 2004, there were only 2 clinics in the world. Now there are hundreds of gender clinics in the United States. As I've said, a lot of money is being made. This surgery is very involved. It starts with the puberty blockers. It doesn't usually end there. Then it's the cross-sex hormones. Then it's the surgery. And this promise that once you're in the right body, you're going to be this wonderfully happy adult. And it's a lie. I shudder to think what's going to happen in 10 years. We are going to look at this as the ugliest part of our history. The ugliest, most disgusting part of our history, that we allowed this to go on. We once allowed frontal lobotomies, and that was pretty hideous. And that went on for 30 years. I shudder to think that this will go on for that amount of time before we do something about it, before we put an end to this. Nobody's saying people shouldn't have the right to do whatever they want with their body, but not as children, okay? What Dr. Grossman talks about is, and definitely was something that I saw, rapid onset gender disorder, okay? What happens is this gender dysphoria is occurring with many of the kids nowadays when they reach their teen years, okay? The studies in the past, anything done on gender dysphoria was, first of all, the studies were done on adults, and usually what they found was that it had a very early onset. You would see the dysphoria early in age. It didn't suddenly appear when kids became teenagers. That's something else going on. The other thing I want to say is that we're taking a one-size-fits-all approach to treating gender dysphoria. Puberty blocker, hormone, cross-sex hormones, but wait a minute, what about the underlying problems that are leading to the gender? It's not the same for everybody. Everybody doesn't go through that for the same reason, so we shouldn't treat it as a one-size-fits-all. People are not really hearing what are the consequences. Diane spoke about some of the consequences of these sex reassignment surgeries, of the gender-affirming medical treatment, which includes the puberty blockers, the cross-sex hormones, and the surgery. The surgery is so invasive. You guys just ate. I don't even want to get into what some of the surgery is like. I suggest people look it up. I really do. Because then you'll get a full understanding. And I can't even imagine, quite honestly, why that would be the step a parent would go to before exhausting all else for their children. And the way we're getting there, like the doctors, it's not like kids have to go through, it's very relevant. Like there's a lot of disagreement among the professionals. And you'll have the one doctor that'll check off 3 boxes. Okay, no, you're a candidate. And then, of course, then there's the more conservative doctors, I guess, that will say, no, I think the kid needs a little therapy. But there's really no guidelines. There's really no consensus on how we get to the point of giving a child puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, or ultimately surgery. There's really no consensus, and there's really no guidelines, which is scary with a thing that intrusive. The research is really scanty. It's flawed. There's not enough of it. Even in the places like the Dutch studies, okay, they did studies on, oh my God, I'm losing my words. They did studies, but they did studies on adults. They never recommended doing studies on children. Okay, they even warned us against doing studies on children. And look where we are. I don't get it. And even diagnosing a child, let me just say that, I was always taught that we don't diagnose children during childhood because children develop differently. Okay, that doesn't mean they have any kind of a disorder because they develop differently. They're going through hormonal changes, and they act quirky. I worked with kids for 23 and a half years. They're kids. They should just be allowed to be kids. They are quirky. They don't develop at the same level. So how can we diagnose children? We've been doing it with the ADHD and all of that, and I don't think that's ending well either. I mean, I have a feeling that that's part of a problem here that we're seeing with young adults. They've been over-medicated. And now we're taking it to the next level. Now we're not only medicating, we're doing surgery. So, you know, there is a problem with diagnosing children. And what I saw in my job, like, I would see one child come in with multiple diagnoses. There was no agreement even among the clinicians. It was so subjective. And now here is all of this is going on, and then they tell parents, you know, we know better. We know best for your child. And if you don't do what we tell you to do, well, you know what? We're for parent, Moms for Liberty, we're for parent rights, okay? We don't co-parent with the government. We are in charge of our children. We know best. And we have to really go back to a common sense approach to all of this, because what's going on makes no sense. Mayor Adams, in case anybody didn't know, he designated, on top of all of this, of all we know and all we don't know, he designated New York by executive order as a sanctuary city for gender-affirming care. So in other words, if a child comes from another state where it's not allowed, he cannot do anything to aid an investigation or anything like that for that child. Our children are basically being used to promote political agendas. Next slide. And then just a quick thing about SEL, social emotional learning. This is something that we're doing in the schools also that I'm opposed to, that we as Moms for Liberty as well are opposed to. They're treating, what it is, it's a trauma-informed mental health practice that's designed to psychologically manipulate participants into a desired mindset. SEL started out pretty innocent, but now it's expanded the definition of trauma to include, historical trauma like slavery and racism. And what it does is everything is looked at through a lens of social justice, and as if everybody has a problem, everybody has trauma, and everybody needs mental health care. Now, this is not what school's about. Okay, teachers, you know, and I'm not demonizing teachers, because teachers have little to say. They're not allowed to say. And it's very difficult for them to speak out, as it was for me. Fortunately for me, I had 2 years to go, and I could take that loss in my pension. But some people aren't in the same position, so they're stuck. They're basically hostages to the system. But teachers, you know, to air out all of the mental health issues and children's innermost feelings in the classroom, where is their privacy? Where is the right to privacy? Now, as their counselor, as a guidance counselor, I always protected their privacy. I didn't even share most of what I heard. Like, I really didn't share any of what I heard, other than, you know, the child has some problems at home. But I protected their privacy. When they came in my office in a small group, okay, I made it clear to the other kids that you cannot share information that is spoken about in this room. And they understood that, and children's information, their innermost feelings and all that were kept private. When I left my job, okay, I was allowed to take my files with me that I had on the children and destroy them. Why now are we putting all children's information and feelings and all of that on surveys that go online? I don't understand that. I don't approve of that. And what are we doing with that information? So, and if you look at every child in your classroom as though they need a mental health intervention, then trust me, you're looking for problems. You're going to look for problems that may not even be there. Okay, because that's what happens. And kids are slick. Kids know that if they express something that's going to get your sympathy, and if they think you're expecting to hear something, they're going to say it. They're going to want the attention too. They want attention. So you can't treat the classroom as a mental health session. Okay, next. you know, and you can't assume that every child is at risk. Every child, yes, has some kind of trauma, but who gets to determine what trauma is? Well, trauma for some kids is not getting the Game Boy or something like that. Trauma for other kids might be, oh, I don't have the same clothes, I don't have my $300 sneakers. So, you know, you can't treat everything like it's a trauma. You have to have some good sense. You deal with the kids who have trauma, but you don't have to treat the whole school building as a trauma center. It's basically collecting mental, SEL, social emotional learning surveys, collects mental health data on students. Okay, the questions are leading, they're biased, they're personal. And you basically, when a child fills out a mental health survey at school, they don't really even understand half of the questions they're being answered, that they are answering. So that's another problem. Maybe it might help to teach them to read a little better first. Yeah, you don't want, like, parents have a right to say, I don't want psychological profile of my child in the school. What right do people have to have that? And what are you doing with it? And what are you doing with that? You know, it's just unnecessary. So parents do have the right to opt out. Next slide. Well, what do we do about this? What do we do about this? Well, you can, number one, opt out of the surveys, as I said. You can also opt out of the lessons. That's because it's not mandatory right now. It's under the PPRA, the Pupil Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment. You can still opt out. You can still opt children out of anything SEL related or any surveys. You have to be actively involved in education. You have to be at the school board meetings. You have to be alert. It's no more that you could just trust your kids in the hands of the school system. They have your kids 7 hours a day. You need to be on top of it and know what's going on. You need to express your concerns with local politicians. You need to see where they stand on parental rights. That's important. I mean, for me, we're talking about a lot of things today. There's so many fires going on at the same time. It's like whack-a-mole. We don't know which way to turn. But I'm telling you, I truly believe kids are not being paid enough attention. And these issues this is our most important thing. These are our children. These are our families. We have to pay attention. We can't be distracted. We have to give our energy to our children. They cannot fight for themselves. Be vigilant about what they're learning. And the thing is also, young children see things differently than adults. Okay, they see things from a different perspective. So don't assume they're seeing it the same way you're seeing it. You might see something as innocent and they see it a totally different way. For example, when kids came back to school after the pandemic, many of them were afraid to come to school and didn't want to come to school. And upon speaking with the children, I found out that the reason why they were afraid to come to school is because they're very literal, and they think the world revolves around them. And they felt if they come to school, because of what they were hearing, they are going to go home and kill their moms and dads, grandparents, and so on because of what they were hearing. This is what we're doing to children? I mean, how can they learn when this is what we're filling their heads with? If we're not filling their heads with the world is going to come to an end because of global warming, if you don't wear a mask, you're going to kill your family. I mean, these are the kind of things we're filling their heads with. And also anti-patriotism. You know, you're a victim, you're an oppressor, America's bad. You know, we're just filling their heads with nothing but negativity. And I think we're seeing the results of that. You have to have constant conversations with your kids, because you can't shield them from everything, so open the conversations. Talk to them about what's going on. Talk to them, find out what they're hearing in school. Find out how they're interpreting what they're reading. And also, we want to get some normal-minded candidates elected, as I said before. We want to get some people to run for school board positions. That's the only, we're going to have to take it back from the bottom up. And that's the way we're going to do it. Okay, next. And of course, join us. There's power in numbers. Believe me, I truly believe there's more of us than people who think otherwise. You know, most people do not want this stuff for their children. Most people are opposed. Okay, so the more people we get on board, the more power we have, and the more pushback we're going to have, of course, but we have to do this for the children. Let's not look back at this period in history and have to say, well, why didn't, you know, have your child look at you and say, why didn't you help me? Why didn't you stop this? Why didn't you stop me from making this horrible decision that impacted on me for the rest of my life? So thank you very much for your time and attention. I have the books with me if anybody wants to look. I have handouts. Thank you.
I'm so thankful to be here. I am very passionate and have, with my career as a singer, my sole source of income and work has been education as a teacher. I've worked with all ages and believe that arts education is essential. As a teacher, I've noticed that music, even when music was waning, it is used as a tool even in core subjects and academic subjects. This is a very important thing, to have music as a foundation in the education of a child. I am very excited and very happy at how the educational system has grown since I have started teaching many years ago, decades ago. I've been at the hands of budget cuts and many different forms of prioritizing the education of a child, and often being in situations where music was thought of last for funding and where music was not at the top of the child's education. And it really should be the foundation, and now it seems to be that way, which is absolutely wonderful. And I am holding on for this to continue on. Music is often used and has shown through many articles and different sources that music actually enhances the performance of a child in their core subjects. And this is very important, and this also enhances academic well-roundedness of the child, the student life. So for this to be at the forefront and be the mainstay as we continue on in the education field, and being a part of the Department of Education as long as I have, I've just seen such leaps and bounds and such a big turnaround that this excitement in my spirit is really a source of developing more types of activities for the student, in which classical music is just quite a tool for performance enhancing. It develops a child in a certain way. You're learning a specific skill, learning a specific instrument, learning how to sing classical music, learning songs in a different language, develops the child in a certain way. It sharpens their tools in other areas of their study. It is proven. And also, it develops a certain type of style of studying that enriches what they are doing. It brings about and develops the child in a different way, but makes them more studious. And it shows their importance. It shows them at different levels of importance while bringing them into a completely different area. When they are learning music that they hear often, like on the radio all the time, they see on TV all the time, they're very comfortable. But to learn music that they don't hear as much, brings them out of their comfort zone and actually broadens them, opens their eyes, shows them to see different things. They become more inquisitive in different ways, and it broadens their horizons. The universal language of music should be learned early on, and that is in the classroom, in childhood education. You know, this is essential. This is very essential, and I'm glad through all my years of teaching, I have seen it go this way. And when I enter the classroom as a teacher, I do bring classical music and introduce it. And I always see a change in a student. Their eyes brighten, and my eyes brighten as well. My eyes brighten every time. And it is the brightest smile for me. The concerts have a variety, a different flair. And this is very exciting to be at the helm and on the edge of something wonderful that has been going on, and that I pray will continue. I'm once again, so happy to be here and happy to share this information. I'm happy to be back in the classroom and a teacher. After some time off, I'm back in the classroom as a teacher. And I'm looking at the students' faces and seeing their happy smiles, and my smile as well is invigorating, and I'm looking forward to many bright futures to come. Thank you. God bless you.
So what I think we should do, Lisa had volunteered to give a closing prayer. I would like to have her do that now, and then there's some cookies and coffee, and people can have that and mingle. And if you have questions or discussion, please come up to myself, Elena Chin. Thank you very much. I just really... Lisa, Bryce, thank you so much. She's going to give the closing prayer, and then we'll have dessert and mingle. And one last very important word from your sponsor. My campaign needs funds. If you have not, and I appreciate that people donated to come here, if you are in a position to give the legal limit of $3,300, please do so. I am not getting dark money. I do not have a super PAC that's slipping me millions of dollars. And no individual is allowed to give over $3,300 during an election cycle, which is between now and the primaries of next year.